you want access to this podcast earlier than any other viewer, consider becoming a channel member. All tiers get access to this podcast earlier than people who are not channel members, and it does help out this channel a lot. So if you do want to get all of the news updates, discussions, and market information for Flesh and Blood before anybody else, please make sure to become a channel member today. This podcast is also sponsored by Findall's Collection. Findall's Collection is a collection database website dedicated to showing you the market analytics of all things Flesh and Blood. Looking to track an entire master set? Findall's Collection has you covered. It's as easy as creating a collection in their collection tab and choosing which set you'd like to see in all of its glory. There's even an option to only add one of each equipment and cold foil, which really excites my set collecting heart. As a free user, you can upload your collection here to have a great look into what you have accomplished so far in Flesh and Blood. But if you wanted to track your collection in the secondary market, becoming a subscriber really ramps up that analytics portion of Findall's Collection. For a measly $3 a month, you get to see the gain and loss each of your collections receive, so you can accurately determine the worth of your cardboard, as far as dollars are concerned. Subscribers also get access to the Market Trends and EV Tracking tabs, too. Market Trends is a great way for you to see what's hot in the Flesh and Blood market, and may even give you some insight into what you should pick up for your own collection. The EV Tracker tool is another great example of the data that Findall's Collection can provide. Tired of wondering if you're going to get hosed if you buy a booster box or even a case? Well, the EV Tracker is constantly updated to show what your estimated value is on each Flesh and Blood sealed product, which is a great thing for sealed collectors or even people who are just looking to get into the single selling business. Again, all of these tools and more are available to you for just $3 a month. But how about a free month's trial of the site before you settle in? By going to the subscription section and choosing a promo code, you can enter my affiliate code ASHTCG, all capitalized and all one word, and you will get a month of Findall's Collection subscription service for free. So if you've been looking for a new card collecting database for your master set collections, or even just some small little collections of your favorite pieces of Flesh and Blood, look no further than Findall's Collection. Don't forget to use the promo code ASHTCG when subscribing to receive a free month of service. Thank you so much to Findall's Collection for sponsoring this channel, and let's get back to the video. Welcome on in Dragonfolk to our very first official episode of the Common Language Podcast. It's a Flesh and Blood podcast where I, Alex, talk to you all about the fantastic things of Flesh and Blood, some hot topics. We talk about some awesome ways to get into the game or to try out new things as far as casual players are concerned. And then we even go over some market stuff at the end of it too. So I'm happy to go ahead and be turning this into a podcast. I did run this as a live stream for quite a while, but I felt like the engagement was not as direct. I'd get off topic a lot, and that tends to be a problem. So I wanted to make sure to utilize this as a structured way to get my voice out there without having to do anything insane. So first, I would like to say that those of you who are listening to this, it was as it releases over at our channel membership level. Thank you so much for choosing to do that. If you guys don't know, if you didn't see that little thing at the beginning of the video, if you do become a channel member, you can watch these episodes earlier in the week as opposed to when I post them normally to the public. So it is always a great, awesome read for you guys as far as, listening to this, and, you have it out in the car and you're able to put it on your commute. So I'm always happy to be providing that for you. Secondly, for a visual aid, right? I do have this here. You get to see my face. So if you're watching this on YouTube, there's that. If I end up getting this ever on like Spotify in audio form or iTunes or whatever in audio form, I'll have audio versions of that available, and you won't be able to see this wonderful shining ray of light that is my window next to me. So visual listeners, I apologize for this. I don't know how you listen visually, but that's it, right? It's blinding light right here. So anyway, let's get into it, right? What is this podcast? What is its purpose? How am I going to be giving you guys this information that's going to help you? And, well, the common language, the name at least, is derived off of James White's vision for Flesh and Blood, which is the common language of playing great games. And this can pertain to any TCG, no matter what. Magic, Yu-Gi-Oh!, Grand Archive. But the way I look at it is kind of also a terminology that it kind of allows for a nice play on words almost, because I, as a player, am very big on budget play. I like to still play at a fairly higher level if I have the money and time to do so. But for the most part, I'm really just looking forward to getting cards, playing the game at a very, very low budget, and then using the rest of whatever I would have to continue to grow my own personal portfolio as far as investments and savings and so on and so forth. And then once I'm settled there, I can then go ahead and look into the collecting aspect of the TCG that I enjoy playing. So this is where we get into budget formats. And while I'm still on this podcast, still going to talk about things like Classic Constructed, which is the more popular, less budget game of Flesh and Blood, I wanted to make this podcast a big focus on the actual play of budget formats that don't normally get the same light. In most cases, when you're talking about Flesh and Blood, you're usually talking about Classic Constructed being the most popular. But there are several other formats that exist for Flesh and Blood, and I love pretty much all of them. Haven't dabbled a little bit in UPF, haven't really done that yet, but I know a guy, so it very well could happen at some point. But I wanted to go ahead and just talk about these formats and why they're important. Why these formats are so important. And it's usually something that is skipped over. When people look at Flesh and Blood and they see just the great organization of the competitive scene for the game, they say, wow, this is why I left X game, is because their organized play was nowhere near as good. And then you look at Flesh and Bloods and you're like, wow, this is a completely different thing. Everything is so well structured. It happens all around the world. There's tons of events happening all the time. The prize pool is really, really high. So there's a lot of incentive to go play those competitive formats. But what many don't know is that there are a lot of budget formats in the game, such as Commoner, which is essentially the pauper of Flesh and Blood, where your deck is entirely comprised of commons, and then your arena area, which is your equipment and your hero and your weapon, can all be rare or common or token, right? Any of those. That is a great way to get people into the game. I love talking about Commoner. The meta has been changing, actually, which has been really, really amazing. We haven't seen a change in Commoner meta for quite a while, but with the release of Heavy Hitters and then now the release of Part the Mistveil, both Olympia and Enigma are doing really, really well into the game. And I feel like the more eyes we have on these formats as they continue to grow, as new cards begin to enter, because again, with every new set, there are sure some powerful cards that are for Classic Constructed and, all these great legendaries and majestics, but there are also different commons that enter the format, different common and rare pieces of equipment that enter the format. And so Commoner also gets a shift every single time one of these things happen, and that's really, really nice. But that's where that ease of access comes in. Commoner, as well as things like Clash, which is a format that I am a committee member of. It's a fan-made format, so it's not officially run by LSS. We, as a committee, kind of decide to take a vote and make changes to the format based on player feedback. And we also run leagues on our Discord, which I'll leave in the description down below. That is where you're going to be able to find a lot of us talking about Clash. I know a lot of people have been looking at Clash as their favorite format to play getting into the game. I've seen that nearly everywhere on plenty of different Commoner and Clash videos. So I'm very, very happy to continue to provide that kind of content for you guys over here, because on top of this podcast, I also like to upload our games from the league, and I like to also talk about changes that we will be making in Clash or deck techs or anything of the sort. So that's a big thing. You don't have to be a channel member to get those early, but maybe you might. I don't know. We'll see. I wouldn't mind having it all be, if everybody's going to be able to get the content earlier than when I'd like to release it, but we'll figure that out in post. So ease of access for this game is really, really great because these budget formats do exist. You're able to get a pretty top dollar deck for about $30, and you can go ahead and utilize that deck in those formats. So the accessibility into the game is really, really nice because you have those. Now, if there is one thing that I would like to gripe about, that I would hope that other, LGSs or game stores, whatever, I'm hoping that at some point in the future, if you truly care about Flesh and Blood, you run 2 days of events. One day being for players who are new and with not a lot of budget to spend, and another day where you play Classic Constructed in an armory. You can save the armory promos for Classic Constructed. Obviously that is going to be the bigger thing. It's going to bring people in, is those prizes and the experience and so on and so forth. And you have that high level play. But what most LGSs don't end up doing, at least here in the States, is they don't end up making a second day or even attempt to do anything outside of Classic Constructed for their events. Because Classic Constructed, in most cases, LGSs are running several different TCGs of events. You've got Digimon, One Piece, Magic, Yu-Gi-Oh!, Pokemon, Star Wars Unlimited, Lorcana, Grand Archive, Weiss Schwartz. What am I forgetting? That's pretty much it. And with all of these card games existing and people wanting to play them, there's only so many days of the week, and there's only so many employees that can be able to learn these events and be able to run them. So it is pretty important to make sure that you have that down as far as playing from that level. So that's something I personally suggest to other LGSs, is to have a secondary day. Because while it is easy to get into the game as far as buying a deck that you like with a hero style that you like and going and trying them out and playing them online through means like Talishar or Felt Table or whatever that might be, you're not really able to play it in person a whole lot if LGSs around you are not willing to actually make an event for that. Now, I have to say that something that a lot of people don't realize is that the casual scene of Flesh and Blood has to grow much like how the competitive scene of Flesh and Blood grew, which is you need to just get a bunch of people who are like-minded and want to do this thing, get them together, and then tell your LGS, hey, we want to start doing this thing. Show your LGS that you have interest in people who want to run these events or who want to participate in these events, and that you yourself can run them, or it is something that'll bring in people into the store. And by doing so, you're going to be able to actually have, LGS support at some point, right? Because you might need to start off doing something like you and 6 other people get together and you run a small tournament where you have like prize packs as your, a pack round kind of deal where the winner of every round gets a pack and then you get a pack for entry, so on and so forth, right? You're not going to be able to make your box back entirely, but you're only giving out a certain amount of packs, so on and so forth. It's just, it's a fun little thing, right? But that's going to have to come out of your own budget before you actually end up having support from an LGS. Some LGSs are willing to do something like that, and it really does make a big difference as far as budget formats go, but you can't guarantee that happens. So with ease of access also comes the fact that not a lot of people, at least like from a Friday Night Magic or Classic Constructed Armory kind of perspective, most people don't end up actually playing them. And so because of that, it's kind of a stretch to get people in, because a lot of people are already ingrained in Classic Constructed. But some people want to take breaks. Some people want to play other formats. Some people want to try out more casual things or not get super sweaty into a competitive scene. And so if you want to be that change for your community, I definitely suggest doing that. But it is what it is, right? It's not the end of the world. But something that these budget decks end up actually doing, and it's something that I quite enjoy, is that when you are limited to a certain amount of cards, all those cards that you would be playing in things like Classic, Constructed, and Blitz are no longer available. A lot of the Majestics or Legendaries are just not cards you can play. And because of that, it allows for more intricate deck building strategies. So you get to, switch out some certain cards. You can use Wreak Havoc as opposed to Command and Conquer. You can utilize Flock of the Featherwalkers and Assassin. You can run a Pummel Prism build. There's just so many different things that you can do to get excited for these formats. And something that I just enjoy is that level of deck building. You don't just have to take the best cards that are in the game and go, oh, this is how this is going to run. If a deck requires a lot of extra support, like in Commoner, there are a lot of people who claim that Runeblade is just kind of unplayable, unless you're playing Chain. Chain is probably the one Runeblade in Commoner that is at least somewhat viable, but that's because a lot of his cards are zero cost go-agains that you play from Banish, so you just stack them all in the Banish zone and you come in for a whole bunch of damage. But most other Runeblades don't end up having the same support as you would if you were in Clash. Clash, you're allowed to have some rares that allow for more rune chant generation, which helps turn on Rune Gate and helps stack up your rune chants against your opponents to try to go for an OTK build. There are several different concepts that are available, and you get to just be weird with it. I think that's great. I feel like it's great to kind of take a look at these decks and see what kind of jank you can build and kind of go from there. And there's new young heroes that are instilled in these formats all the time. Not to mention the fact that Commoner, being an official format for Flesh and Blood, as well as Clash, the non-official format, both of those are evergreen in how they work. So there's normally a living legend system, which is how heroes rotate out of formats to make sure that their power is not a constant, and eventually they retire from the format that they're in when they reach enough living legend points. But in both Commoner and Clash, there is no living legend system. So you pretty much just get to play these heroes for as long as you want. You don't have to worry about anything else. And I think that's really, really awesome. It's a great way to kind of get things going for you. Another thing that I enjoy, and something that maybe not a lot of people know when it comes to Flesh and Blood, is that there are big tournaments that happen for these budget, formats in the spaces of the organized play events. At every calling, at every battle hardened, at every pro tour, at every nationals, at every world championship, there is a side event, several side events for Commoner. But there's one side event in which you can enter to essentially play for a gold foil. Now, these gold foils normally you would only be able to get if you were winning a Pro Quest or winning an RTN. They're rares and commons and majestics. They're like, lower rarity versions of cards, but they're still a gold foil. And originally they were giving out lore books, which you can find online. You end up spending somewhere between like $800 to $1,000 for a lore book. And I'm not sure what they're going for right now, but they were expensive. And now they've changed where they're no longer giving out the lore book as the prize. Now what they're doing is giving out a gold cold foil. This is a huge upgrade as far as things are concerned. And it really makes people feel like they're playing in something that's got high stakes while still being at a budget level. Every deck that is played at these events is like $10 to $20. And you're playing for a card that at most, unopened, you can sell for hundreds. I'm talking like $500, $600, $700. So obviously, there's a way for you to make this competitive. Now, granted, those big events only really end up happening at these big organized play things. So it's not like there's often a battle hardened specifically for commoner, right? This never happened. Normally, those are all classic constructed. Callings are classic constructed. Nationals is classic constructed. Even Pro Quests and Road to Nationals are classic constructed. But at the big events, at the conventions, essentially for Flesh and Blood, you are able to find commoner events. And even if you're just playing commoner, you get some tickets, so you can go spend those tickets at the prize wall. It's a pretty great deal. And you get a lot of stuff for that. And there's been a lot of turnout at these commoner events. There's also, of course, other formats that exist as side events too, but specifically talking about commoner, it's just nice to see that more and more people are getting them going. And personally, one of my favorite things that I like about the concept of a budget format is that it actually makes collecting cards incredibly easy for me. Now, normally, you have to make a decision in some cases where you have expensive collections or expensive decks. And both of them are going to change the way that you personally play. Because you could bring a budget deck to an event, and you can do that simply because you don't have the money to spend on actual cards to play with. You'd rather keep them pristine and in a collection. Or you can go ahead and spend your money on getting the best playable deck possible, and then you're going to probably end up having to sell most of that deck, or at least spend even more money to change decks if anything happens to that hero. But if you're playing at a budget format where most decks are $30, you can comfortably buy a deck. You can buy, you can buy like 10. Well, let's do the math on that. What is that? If a normal classic constructed deck, let's say on average goes for about a competitive classic constructed deck, goes for about $700. Let's just make that number better and let's make it $600, right? $600 to get a fairly good classic constructed deck in the meta. When you look at that and then you divide it by 30, that is 20 different decks that you can get available to yourself in a commoner or a clash format. And now you have access to a whole wide variety of decks. Nobody needs 20 decks. That's crazy. But even if you just cut that down to 10, you spend $300 and you get 10 decks that you know are the core concept. These are your 10 favorite heroes, your 10 favorite playstyles. And these are the decks that you want to keep focusing and building on unless a new hero catches your eye. And the best part is that if a new hero does catch your eye, in most cases, it's $30 more. Not the end of the world. But collecting becomes significantly easier because when you want to look at collecting things like marvels or cold foils or anything of the sort, those numbers look very, very daunting. But if you're not spending money on expensive Majestics or any more additional legendaries than you already have, you can utilize them strictly in your collection, right? Those Codex of Frailties, you no longer need to keep 3. You can sell 2 of them at a higher price, keep the 1, and then you can use that money to buy other parts of master set collections, or maybe you're just collecting marvels in general and you just want to keep buying marvels. You have several options available to you. And because you're not spending all this money on keeping up with the meta, you're now keeping up with collecting while still playing at a fairly, competitive level of a format. So it definitely makes collecting a lot easier. And it also helps in regards to the cold foils for young heroes. Young heroes, or really anything in these formats, a lot of stuff tends to drop in price significantly if it's a young hero version of the card, or is something that's no longer being able to be played in their living legend format. So if something like Icelander, for instance, right? Icelander is living legend in Blitz and in Classic Constructed. So nobody at this current moment is able to play Icelander in those formats. But because Commoner still exists, as well as Clash, both of these formats have Icelander still available as a hero to be played. which means that now if you have a Marvel Young Icelander, you can now go ahead and utilize that as a card for you to play that hero in these formats. It no longer means, oh, hey, you know, now this shiny piece of cardboard that I like to show off to everybody because I really enjoyed this hero, I can no longer use, so I have to put it into a binder and just wait until she gets something, right? I mean, the hero is never going to return, but a different form of that hero might. But it's just like it's a weird area. It's a very, very weird area in that regard. But it allows for you to utilize these cards in different ways. You can still play with them in Commoner and Clash and all these, and even in UPF. UPF does not have a Living Legend system, so you can utilize them there as well. But it's just a matter of you have more access to cards in these formats. You no longer have to sell them to, you know, get rid of them and, you know, throw away all your memories with this hero so you can try something else. You can still utilize them in those regards if you wish to play them. But if you're trying to do things like collect, or you're trying to, you know, speculate on things or so on and so forth, it's going to be easier to do if all of your decks only cost $30 and you don't need to worry about upgrading them on a regular basis. Whereas otherwise, you're going to have to spend a little bit more. So speaking of collections, now that we're done kind of talking about budget formats and my thoughts on them, I wanted to go ahead and talk a little bit about the collection aspect of Flesh and Blood. So Flesh and Blood has always been something that I've found very, very collectible. Obviously, I started in Uprising. I guess it's not obvious to you. If it were obvious to you, I wouldn't have to say obviously. I would be saying obviously. Anyway, I started back when Uprising came out. So when Uprising came out and I saw the Marvel Dragons, I was like, wow, this is my game. This is my jam. I'm down for this. And so that's what I did is I looked it up. I looked up all those things, and the collectability in Flesh and Blood is, I think, like second to none. They really do care about whether or not their cards are worth value. They're rare to pull. There are some secret special things that happen in some of them, and it's just very, very, very cool. But what I want to do for you visual, listeners, people who are watching this on YouTube, obviously I'm going to have this up on the screen, and we're going to talk a little bit about collections, about where the market's looking at right now, what cards are going up, what cards are going down, different views on things. But for audio listeners, I'll try to go ahead and just, read out the card name and where the card is from and talk about its gains and losses and so on and so forth. So the app I'm using for this is Findall's Collection. We did have an ad read for that at the beginning of this podcast. So if that is something you want to check out, please go ahead and utilize our code ASHTCG if you want to subscribe to this. Otherwise, you can still utilize it for free, but I think there's a limitation you hit at some point, and that subscribing is going to be the best way. It's only like $3 a month, so it's pretty cheap. It's just about as cheap as becoming a channel member here and getting the podcast early. But Findall's Collection has a really awesome market trends calculator here, where it takes the market trends of TCG player and changes up its own value, right? It shows what cards are doing really well on the market, what cards are going up in price, what cards are going down in price, and kind of gives you an idea as to what people are looking to do with the general concept of these cards. So what I want to look at is the general percentage gain for these things, right? I had it on flat gain a second ago. Percentage gain is a little bit better because it shows you that cards are moving significantly more. So some cards that are moving within these past 3 days, right? Mind you. So this is new stuff. Within these past 3 days, cards that have been moving are Polar Blast Blue, an unlimited rainbow foil Polar Blast Blue from Tales of Aria is up to $1.65. Now, obviously, that is an Icelander card, and Icelander does really, really well in Commoner and Clash. So I'd imagine if people are going to be playing this, because Rosetta the new set that's going to be coming out does not have ice in it. So there's no ice hero being released. But Polar Blast is a card that is utilized in ice a lot. And so I'd imagine this is a lot of people who are getting into Clash or Commoner who are looking to play Polar Blast and want to make their deck really shiny. Another big benefit of playing Commoner or Clash is that if you want to make your deck super cool and shiny with all these rainbow foils and cold foils and marvels and so on and so forth, it's significantly cheaper than if you're trying to do it for a classic constructed deck. So if that's your jam, go for it. Rifting Yellow, a Arcane Rising first edition Rifting Yellow. It is the rainbow foil version of it. It's up to $1.92, almost to $2. Rifting, I know, is a card that I think this is just some weird tech that's essentially happening here, because it's a generic attack action. It's a 2 for 5. When it hits, you may play your next non-attack action card this turn as though it were an instant. This could be wizard tech. You might see this as like wizard tech. It is also a common, I believe. So with it being a common, you're oddly enough not really going to see, like, I don't think it's going to see a lot of play, but this could also be very interesting tech for, again, Commoner or Clash, which we like to see. If these numbers are going up because of Commoner and Clash, then that's going to tell you something about the game itself. Disable Red, a first edition rainbow foil from WTR, has spiked in price, nearly doubled in price. Obviously, I think that's because a lot of collectors are starting to look at the WTR first ed commons and rares in rainbow foil, because a lot of people are coming in with their own collection pieces of them having rainbow foils from this set. And while I don't think I'll ever own a rainbow foil and cold foil first ed, master set of WTR, it is nice to see that these things exist. And so this is probably going up because of that. Oh, or Guardian's just getting crazy right now. So who knows? Madcap Muscle Yellow has gone up, not by a lot. A lot of these cards are going to go up by like cents. It's going to show that they went up by like 50%, but most of these things they moved up from 5 cents to 8 cents, or from 2 cents to 5 cents. But it does show that these cards are seeing some kind of play, because normally their market value only goes up when something has sold, and then the more sales that happen because of it, people are changing their prices, and so the market price tends to reflect that. So with this being the case, you'll see here like Spinning Wheel Kick Blue is up to 19 cents, but nothing really crazy. Banneret of Gallantry is up to $4.66. Banneret of Gallantry is a majestic that came out in Dusk Till Dawn. It's a light warrior action, so I'm assuming this is going to be something that people are going to try to use for Bolton when his armory deck comes out. They do have the opportunity to charge this. This has the Soul Flare keyword. It says when this is charged to your hero's soul, create a Quicken token. So you very well can go ahead and charge this into your hero's soul, get a Quicken token. Helps you with your general game plan for Bolton to have Quicken tokens. So that's kind of it. I'm sure that's going to be great. Let's find another good card that's kind of gone up in price. The Weakest Link. The Weakest Link is a new card from Park the Mistveil in the generic slots, and it's gone up significantly strictly because it is a great counter to the heroes that have no base defense in most of their cards. Brute, with KO, and even Levia, but mostly KO. They run cards that don't have a defense value, like Wild Ride and Pulping and things like that. So they're great options to get out of their hand. But this also really helps against heroes like Zen and also New and Enigma, because if this hits and they have like a Transcend card in their hand, that'll just have them get rid of it. And you get to draw a card on top of it too. So it's value for you, and it's also disruption for them. So this card's definitely seeing a lot of play. It's got the same stats as CNC also, which I'm sure is just like the baseline for a good card. But yeah, so that is That is another card that is going up quite a bit. Let's see, another card that's seen some spike. There's Banneret of Courage going up a little bit. Another majestic Banneret. I think these Bannerets are getting picked up by somebody strictly because Boltyn is getting a new armory deck, and I don't believe these cards are in them, so people are going to try and utilize them to the best of their abilities. Let's see, some other cool card that went up a bit. Thump Yellow has gone up in rainbow foil from the Unlimited Aria. Not sure why. What else? Herald of Triumph Yellow. That is a just more prism stuff. It's just the unlimited. Nothing about it is rainbow foil or anything of the sort. So nothing crazy there. Then you also have Spirit of Irina. Spirit of Irina, another Boltyn card, went up in price up to $10 in market value compared to its prior $8. So from what I can tell, a lot of what we're seeing here is Boltyn stuff is getting picked up due to the hype of the Armory deck, and also just some small collection pieces that I think people are picking up. Either that or a lot of these cards are just being picked up sheerly for the concept of Commoner and Clash, or they're just trying to pick them up for a master set or something of the sort. So I wouldn't worry too much. Luckily, like I said, a lot of these cards are like a couple cents, but a lot of these cards that are moving up pretty significantly, like a decent amount of dollars, are the Boltyn cards. So I'm curious if Boltyn gamers are really trying to fight through this and make that happen. So that is pretty much it for this. There is an EV tracker also on this site that allows you to kind of check the EV for everything. Now, EV is a little rough for most of the product for Flesh and Blood. For some reason, the site does not have any EV data for Part the Mistveil. They have stuff for heavy hitters, but they don't have anything for Part the Mistveil yet. So it's a little hard for them to get that information, but I'm sure it'll be updated sometime soon. What we do see here is that Monarch EV, Monarch First Edition EV, and Crucible of War Unlimited EV is in the positive right now. It's in the green. And that is because a lot, like Crucible of War was fairly underprinted, so there is less and less of these cards that enter the market, and a lot of really good cards in the set as well. But Monarch is also getting a big bump because Light Warrior is happening. I think, we're seeing a lot more of these Prism mains get into the format, and so people like to get into this. And also, I think there's a lot of Runeblade cards in there as well that do really, really well. So Runeblade being one of the classes that's being represented in Rosetta. So there are some Runeblade cards in there that do help kind of work that out. But that's the general EV. What I wanted to go ahead and we're going to just check on our collections. These are not my own personal collections. I do have some of these set up that are just like fun value things. But what I want to look at is my two, at least like collections that I want to definitely finish, and collections that I hope to at some point continue to finish. I don't have any Marvel Angels at this very moment, but I do have Marvel Dragons. Now, the Marvel Dragons have gone down because Dromai is no longer playable in the format, but it's still quite good. These are the market prices. We can go ahead and check the TCG player low pricing. It's significantly less. You can get every single one of these Marvels for the Dragons for under $400, which is pretty good if all of your decks only cost $30 if you're playing things like Commoner or Clash. So there you have it right there. You can go ahead and utilize that to play get some of these cool collectible Marvels that are from previous sets, especially the Dragons, such as just absolutely beautiful cards. But on top of that, you also have the Marvel Angels. The Marvel Angels they're fairly expensive only because this hero is currently in the meta right now. You're able to play with this hero, and it's just very, very, they're very pretty. A lot of these angels look very, very pretty. So a lot of them end up costing, $50 to $100 for some of these cards. But if you're really not looking to play this, if you're not looking to play Classic Constructed, and you're not looking to play Blitz, and you don't need these cards right now, while these cards are technically available to be played in Clash, I don't expect people to go out and buy the Marvels for Clash right now. What I do suggest is that if you are going to be playing this hero, and you're not planning on playing in Classic Constructed or Blitz, and you're not really big on buying any of these cards for this price, you can wait until Prism Living Legends. At some point, she will hit Living Legend, and these angels will go down in price, but Clash will still be able to use them. So you'll see the exact same thing happen, like what happened to the dragons, where they went down significantly in price. These angels will also go down in price. But I gotta say, some of the most gorgeous art I've seen on Flesh and Blood cards. I love all these dragons and how gritty they are, and it represents all their different locations of where they're from. But all of these angels, just the colors pop really well. A lot of their designs are very awesome. And I just think, like, if you have the money to pick them up now, you certainly could. But there will be an opportunity in which this is going to be less. Something that maybe a lot of people don't know is that Flesh and Blood is the market is highly comprised upon whether or not a certain hero is doing well in the current meta for Classic Constructed. If that hero is not doing well in the meta or is Living Legend out of the meta and no longer able to be played, these cards drop in price. So if you are looking to pick any of these up and you need them right now, go ahead and do it, right? Maybe go ahead and try and play Prism. The best part is that if you need to play this Prism deck, every one of these angels is legendary, so you only can play one of each in your deck. Whereas with the dragons, you could play 3 of each of these rare dragons. So these 3 right here, these Majestics, are legendary. They can only have one of them in the deck, but each of these you can have 3 of. So getting all the marvels for this was significantly worse in regards to, you know, making sure if you were trying to make your deck as shiny as possible, you did that. But with this, you just need 1, and that's pretty good. So that's just a couple of the collections we have going on here. I don't want to get too deep into it, but kind of want to just talk about the EV, the general overall health of the market. And I wanted to continue to just talk to you guys about Flesh and Blood, the budget experience, and what we can do as a community to help kind of push this to LGSs. I know it's probably not hard if you are able to go ahead, you go online, you find a bracket thing, right? You don't even need to run this in Gem, right? Because you don't need to run it in Gem. What you need to do instead is just get people together who are interested in doing this, and then just run it, right? Buy a box, give people packs for entering, or you don't even have to give them packs for entering, give them packs for winning. And then you have them come into the event, and then you make it pack rounds. So if you win, you get a pack, and then don't make it like a grand prize thing or whatever, right? If the winner will get 3 packs, the loser will get 0 packs. And then everybody's kind of gotten at least something out of this. If you go 1 and 2, you still want a pack. If you went 2 and 1, you still got 2 packs, so on and so forth, right? And this is all just depending on how many rounds you want to do and so on and so forth. But if you are looking to do this, just get people who are interested in doing it, talk with people in your community, get them involved in something like this, because I know there are a lot of new players who just don't have the same, outlook, right? Some people look at Flesh and Blood in the Classic Constructed world and say, wow, that is really expensive. But then others take a look at things like Classic Constructed and go, hey, that's up my alley. I can spend $500 some like a month on a TCG. And so this is going to be easy to get into, and I'm going to start learning. But different strokes, different folks, you know what I mean? It's all just based on what people want. And I believe that if you can run a high-level event and a new player-friendly low-level event, that both of those events will end up doing really well because it caters to both individuals. And that's kind of the best part of it. So thank you guys so much for watching the podcast. This is the first episode, right? We're talking about budget formats and so on and so forth. I'm going to choose like a topic every week and kind of try to talk this out and have it go from there. I'm probably going to release this episode Thursday, the day that I am recording it, strictly because I want to be able to, get this kind of ball rolling for the most part. But for those of you who are not channel members, you're probably only going to see them on Thursdays. But I want to release them, make another one tonight or make another one on a different day later, and then get it set up and post it on Monday so that channel members can get it on Monday, but newer members can get it on Thursday. So either I'm going to release this one on Thursday or I'm going to hold it off for Monday. Let the channel members get access to this first, and then that's maybe what we'll do. We'll just do it. We'll do that because nothing I'm saying today is very relevant towards most things, and I want to be able to get that information out to people when I can. So we'll go ahead and do that. However I end up doing it. And that's it. Hopefully you guys enjoyed this. I know it's significantly shorter than watching one of my live stream VODs, so hopefully this is great. I'm sure there's a lot less, it's a lot less banter back and forth from the chat, but I do still want to talk to you guys. You can still put comments on this video and talk about it and, show it off to your friends and have a good time. Just kind of like share it around the Flesh and Blood space, because I want more and more people to know that budget formats like Clash and Commoner and UPF and all these things, they're a great gateway to get into the game. And a lot of people don't realize or even want to worry about it. A lot of pro competitive players don't really care too much about these formats, but there is a casual scene for Flesh and Blood. It's just very sporadic and spread amongst different things. They don't all conglomerate. It's not often talked about, right? You don't have interviews with several different channels doing several different interviews with one player who got 4th place at a pro tour. Instead, you're that's what you're getting. You're getting a bunch of creators doing that. They go find somebody who got top 8 at a big event and they go, I want to talk to that guy, and have that person or girl, anybody who is top 8 in these events, and go, hey, I want to know what your deck is, how you piloted it, and how it functions, and then tell that to the rest of the world so that I can get publicity on my channel. Nobody does that for like commoner players. I know Dice Commando does that sometimes for commoner. Clash, I'd like to actually end up doing that for our league champions. I'd like to end up having a talk with our league champions sometimes and kind of talk about their thought process when they're going through the finals and so on and so forth. But overall, super, super awesome stuff. And I'm just happy to continue to have such a great time in Flesh and Blood. And I hope you guys are having a great time in Flesh and Blood too. So don't forget, right? You just got to continue having fun in the Flesh and Blood. And I will see you all in our next episode of the Common Language Podcast. So thank you all so much for watching, and I'll see you then. Bye-bye.